This is Howard Greenstein for Supernova, and my guest today is David Weinberger, who's a writer and a fellow at the Harvard Berkman Center for Internet and Society. Good afternoon, David. How are you?
Hi, Howard. How are you?
Good. Guess we get to do this again for another year for Supernova 2009, and we're going to discuss today a little bit about the theme of change networks, which is the 2009 theme. One of the discussions we were having was about web exceptionalism, and others have put forth the idea that the web might be an exceptional medium. And so I guess my question to you is the web an exceptional medium? What's the concept behind this? Could you explain it a little bit? And then let's discuss some of the things that we might do differently or might not should it be an exceptional medium.
Yeah, I think the phrase keys off of American exceptionalism, which is the notion that the rules don't hold for us because we're America and we're different, which, is both gives us a fair bit of latitude and ingenuity, but also obviously can be abused quite horribly. And so applied to communications media, the term exceptionalism, I think, is often used as to negatively characterize people who are, let's say, overly enthusiastic about the web, that it changes everything. As opposed to a more sober view that says, well, it's a really important new communication medium, but there have been other important communication media like the telephone, and maybe not so much faxes, but telephone and telegraphs, and they're important, but you don't have to have big conferences about them and think that they change everything.
Well, did they have big things when those mediums came out? I do recall was the Preminger film from the 1920s of telling you how to dial a telephone. I mean, it was important enough that AT&T hired a film crew and did 7 minutes of a film that was shown in movie houses because people didn't know how to use the telephone.
Well, that's just because rotary phones are such a weird invention. We got used to them, but the whole idea was just sort of crazy to people. And well, there was when the telegraph was invented, and particularly when the international telegraph lines were first laid, there were serious people, well-known people, who said that this would end war in our lifetime because people would be connected one to another peer-to-peer. They didn't say peer-to-peer, and if they did, given it was underwater, they probably were spelling it P-I-E-R, actually. But everybody could connect everybody else, and we won't be able to go to war anymore because we'll be so empathetic. And that, as you may have noticed, didn't happen. Didn't really work. Nevertheless, I think it would be a mistake to underplay the importance that the telegraph had in binding the world together. So there were some, but the fever pitch around the web, I think, is considerably more than it ever was for those other technologies. And I should say, that if anything, I tend towards being a web exceptionalist. I'm one of those people who thinks that it is epically important, that it really, it's as big as the printing press. It's more or less on that scale.
And sort of what are some of the elements that make the web that exceptional medium? I could think of a couple, but I want to hear, sort of what you're thinking there.
Sure, you don't want to go first?
Well, I mean, I'll put forth the idea that because sort of the end-to-end principle applies, where you can sort of put any device you want on it and create a protocol, and as long as you're not illegal, immoral, or unsanitary, theoretically you can create something like Skype, which we're using right now, which no one would have centrally planned Skype, but it seems to work pretty well, and you can put it on the internet and it'll work because there's protocols for that. And is that a reason, one reason to think that the web is exceptional?
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the single most important reasons. So that the end-to-end principle that says that, well, we don't care if it's data, we'll move it, and we'll move it from point A to point Z, more or less by magic, through an incredibly complex architecture underneath. Right? I mean, this absolutely is rocket science. Nevertheless, if it's a packet, if it's data, we'll move it, and we don't care whether it's voice data or video data or whatever data. Opens up the web for innovation and for economic opportunity like we've never seen. So that by itself, I think, would be one really important reason to think of it as being exceptional. It's not like the telephone. Telephone's great for voice, and that's about it. 100 years later, it's great for faxes, but faxes totally suck. So So yeah, I think that's one tick in the exceptional column.
Okay.
I would point to another maybe as well, which is not exactly the net, but is the web that the net makes possible. The fundamental piece of punctuation that the web gives us is obviously the hyperlink. And hyperlinks, especially viewed in the context of a book culture, the previous exceptional communications medium, the book and printing, hyperlinks in an end-to-end network are so radically different than what we had before. So different from having to print things and the one-to-many relationship of print to readers, first of all. Second of all, the fact that print is scarce. It's hard to be an author. Not very many. Most manuscripts are rejected. Most stuff doesn't get printed in the print realm. And when it is printed, it's static and it's between covers, and it's very, very hard to link from those static pages, paper pages out. You have footnotes, but footnotes are a terrible, terrible way of doing that, because it then becomes a trip to the library to try to find the thing that it links to. There's a huge barrier between the footnote and reading what the footnote points to, which hyperlinks completely erase. And much of our culture and a lot of our institutions of authority assume the limitations of print and assume it, in fact, as a good thing. We've internalized this so much that we think of experts as people who are like books. They have content. They can write books, and they contain within their own personal cover, so to speak, everything you need to know about a topic, because it's so hard to link out from a book. And so institutions of government, certainly the news media, education, all of these are based around a print model, internalizing the limitations of print. And we are in the process now of rapidly overcoming those limitations. And that means restructuring, in some cases destructuring, those important institutions and the nature of authority. And that's a big stinking deal too.